Greetings, everyone, and welcome to TAtech Live. It's wonderful to have you here. We have a great audience from literally all over the world attending this event. So we're delighted to have you join this series, which is all about remote learning, about talent technology for smart recruiters. What we want to do is introduce the very best of talent technology without the hype and without the technobabble. And we've got a great event set up for you today. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about TAtech. Next slide, please. So our previous programs have covered a range of talent technologies, as you can see here. We took a look at conversational AI. We took a look at recruitment marketing and building employment brand pools and a time of we took a look at the whole universe of talent technology as it fits within the HR tech space. And we've also launched an oral history looking at the early days of online recruitment advertising. We talked to a number of the forefathers and foremothers of this particular industry, the most recent one being with Jeff Taylor, the founder and first CEO of Monster. Slide, please. We have a wonderful program for you today, real thought leaders in our industry. You're going to hear from Chris Foreman, the CEO of Appcast, and we're going to talk about how to use a programmatic recruitment platform. So Chris, if you can join us up on the stage here, we'll get started. Okay, it looks like we're still having technical difficulties connecting with Chris, so we're going to work on that. Hang on just a second. While we're waiting for Chris to arrive, I want to mention some of our other upcoming TAtech Live shows. Coming up on February 9th, we're going to do a fireside chat with Aaron Ain, who is the CEO of the company that was formed when Kronos merged with Ultimate Software, now called the I think it's called the Kronos Ultimate Group. And we're going to talk about his book, Work Inspired. He believes that the key to success is what you do for your employees and how you inspire them to really be at their best. So we're going to do an interview with him. And then another session in the TAtech Oral History Project, we're going to sit down and have a chat with Mike Durney, who was the CEO of Dice Holdings. So those are two shows that are coming up. We'll probably have some more down the road a bit. We also have a number of conferences scheduled, digital events for the time being, of course. We are looking to, or I should say, we have finally inked a deal to do a joint digital conference with HR Florida. It's one of SHRM's largest chapters, some 16,000 plus members. And we're going to cover a whole range of topics related to using technology effectively for talent acquisition. That's coming up on May 11th. We are also co-locating with the SHRM Talent Conference, Talent Management Conference. It was scheduled for April 19 to 21 in Las Vegas. I'm told that that's going to be pushed back until later in the year. So TAtech will be joining with the SHRM Talent Conference probably in August. And that will likely be a hybrid, partially in person and partially streaming online. So we're looking forward to that event as well. And then we have also partnered with Direct Employers Association to launch a new conference called Technology, Diversity, and Compliance. It's going to be a one-day event exploring all of the various ways that talent technology can advance DE&I in corporate America. So we have some great programs planned, and we hope that you'll join us for any one of those events. Looks like we have Chris joining us now. Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
I can. Can you?
Terrific. Sorry you had a hard time getting on, but I've been doing a little patter just to keep the audience entertained.
I've been here since 5:02, so I'm glad to finally make it in.
Yeah, we're glad to have you as well. Gotta love Zoom. So let's get started. I want to just spend a minute talking about you, if I may. We have a lot of first-time attendees at a TAtech event. So I know you live on a farm in New England, and you founded a talent technology company. How did that happen?
Well, the primary reason it happened is I fell in love with the gal from New Hampshire. So I met Angela Toms my senior year at a little school in Maine, Colby College, and I moved in her futon with the help of her father. And she grew up in New Hampshire. I fell head over heels in love, and she's smarter than anybody I know. And we made a deal when we got engaged. I was going to follow her to medical school. She got in everywhere, but chose Dartmouth. And so I was a journalist at the time, and we moved up here to 2 hours north of Boston, and I had to pay the rent. And there were no journalism jobs. And so I got into doing startups, and one thing led to another. And now I spent the last 20 years doing startups and recruitment technology, but it all came from the love of my wife.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Now, you've done, as you say, a number of startups, but currently you are the CEO of Appcast, which last year was acquired by Stepstone in Germany, headquartered in Germany. So just for the audience, tell us a little bit about Appcast. What's it do, and what's sort of its claim to fame?
Well, I don't know if there's any fame involved, but so if we roll back the clock to 2013, a business that I founded with a guy by the name of Tim McKegney called Start Date Labs, we were goofing around with a job seeker platform that was endeavoring to close the dreaded application black hole. So a consumer platform that gave updates on your online job applications. And we wanted to monetize that by actually selling recruitment advertising. And we felt that the best way to do that would be to go one step further down the value chain than what Indeed was offering, which was pay-per-click at the time, and make it pay-per-applicant. And we had this really awesome, way of charging per application that involved all these heavyweight integrations with, applicant tracking systems and sophisticated real-time interfaces. And everybody that we spoke to in the talent acquisition marketplace loved the idea of charging per applicant. But we were super small and didn't have a lot of volume. And secondarily, after they heard about all the cool things that we were doing, they were like, that's fantastic. That's a great idea. We're going to talk about this in 9 to 12 months because there's no way we can get any of this done, no matter how much, Chris, you wave your arms and say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it was out of that abject failure, Peter, that, with some skinned knees and elbows, Tim and I kind of took a step back, realized that approach wasn't going to work. And like most good entrepreneurs, we got a little bit pissed off and said, well, we think this is a good idea, but how can we make this work? And through basically a long set of weekends where we decided to look outside of the job space, figuring that someone in the broader online advertising world had solved a problem around conversion tracking and how to make pay for performance advertising work better, probably selling something like airline tickets or sunglasses. That's when we stumbled across, the world of programmatic advertising, where, third-party platforms, use software and data to buy performance advertising, to do almost anything online that you need to sell and to make those ads work better. And Tim and I looked at each other and we kind of scratched our heads and said, huh, this seems like a really good idea. And the ad space in recruitment advertising is pretty darn big, and nobody's doing anything like this. Now, of course, we were wrong. We didn't know that our friends over at Recruitix were doing some of this, early stage, and there were a few other smart people doing it at the same time. But that's what got us started. And the thesis for Appcast is the same as it is today, which is to build software that uses data to buy, job ads, and optimize the outcome for recruiters and marketers around the globe. If you fast forward to today, we sold a good chunk of the business to Axel Springer and Stepstone in 2019. The employees at Appcast and Angela and I still own a nice chunk of the business, and we're 175 people in the family now. And we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of recruitment and advertising spend going through our software every year. The software has bought and optimized billions of job ad clicks and generated over 1 billion job applications. And at last count, at least 1 million hires. And so it's been a hell of a ride. We've got employees in 5 countries, and our products are used in 7. So that's Appcast.
Great. Now you touched on it, but just to make sure that we're all singing off the same sheet of music, can you give me a really simple definition of what programmatic recruitment advertising is?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a war shot test. When people talk about programmatic, especially now, in the marketplace, we kind of believe that we've kind of jumped the chasm a little bit and are entering the middle part of market adoption, or broad-based market adoption of programmatic technology. So there's a lot of folks out there that are what I call programmatic intrigued. They've heard about it from you, or they've seen it, at a conference, or they've read a case study, and everyone has a slightly different perspective of what it is. And so it's a question I typically start off most of my talks about is, what is this? And a lot of folks in talent acquisition think that it's like a magic wand. Like the things that have been, attributed to programmatic technology and the benefits that accrue from it, are just short of world peace. And, nothing could be further from the truth. Programmatic tech is actually fairly straightforward software that does math really, really fast to buy and optimize job ads. And those ads can be on job sites. Those ads can be display ads, like you see on a news site. Those ads can be, on a social platform like Facebook, or a search platform like Google. And so, the ads can be in a lot of different places, but at its core, it's a buying platform that figures out what ads are working and where, and, stop spending on ads that don't work and spends more on ads that do. And, again, we can get into a lot of bits and bytes and talk a lot more technical detail, but at a high level, that's what it does.
So when you say optimize job ads, what you're talking about, if I understood what you just said, is making sure that you aren't spending money that's not working for you, and you are spending your money where you're most likely to get your best return on investment. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's got, it's a good clarification. So there's a whole variety of vectors in terms of the optimizations that a piece of software can make. The first one is just simple, source-based optimization. Does this site, wherever it happens to be, do the clicks that come from that site actually titrate into applies and hires? Right? I mean, is that a good site or a bad site for the folks that you're trying to hire? That's level 1. Level 2 is the content in your job ads optimized to drive the most value and deliver the most hires. And so that's another vector. It's not just the sites that you're using. It's like, does this job title work? Does that content work? Should you have a longer title? Should you have a shorter title? Should you talk about a sign-on bonus? So there's a whole bunch of optimizations around that. The third level of optimization, and again, all titrating down to whether or not you get a hire, is where the ad should be geographically targeted. So, there's a lot of data that we share in the Appcast benchmark report, which is downloadable from our website, that talks about, what the market rate is for a click and what people are paying for an apply, and, in broadly how those things apply to a hire. But more often than not, especially in a lot of blue collar, positions, one of the biggest indicators of efficiency is what is the distance between where a job seeker actually applies for a job, meaning where they are on, in the physical world, and where the job is that they're applying for. And so optimizing, the geographic environment in which those ads are shown can really impact the overall efficiency of what you're doing. But in general, through whether it's the bid that you're putting in to buy placement, the site that you're going to, the content that you're using, meaning the ad itself, and the geographic fence that you put around the ad, all of it is the software is designed to ensure that your recruitment advertising dollars generate the most hires at the lowest possible cost.
So I know this isn't right on topic, but I have to ask you this question based on what you just said. Do you think the move towards remote working is going to change the importance of that geographic fence you just talked about?
Well, it is super interesting. So on certain jobs, what I was speaking to was specifically blue collar jobs that have a physical location where someone goes, a factory where they go, a warehouse where they're packing a box, a place where they're going to drive a truck, even service-based jobs, so like in retail, in food, in hospitality, and in healthcare. Those are location-based jobs that honestly are super hard to do from a distance.
Right.
What we are seeing already, though, Peter, which is super interesting, is how white collar positions that can be done remotely are being advertised using platforms like the software that we've built, the software that our friends at Recruitix have built, to cast a wider net geographically for those open white collar positions that can be done remotely. So we track this. There's 34 major companies that have in the Fortune 500 that basically said, if you can do your job remotely, you can do it from anywhere you want to, and we're no longer going to ask you to come back to the office. And a bunch of those companies are realizing that their recruitment marketing has to change, because they shouldn't just be advertising that job just in the Bay Area and hoping someone in Montana reads it. They need to be advertising that job in Montana too. And that actually is practically hard today, because historically those white collar jobs were always location based, maybe a couple of different offices, but now it's fundamentally every zip code in the United States that has smart people in it.
Boy, the times they are changing, huh?
Somebody said that.
Well, listen, so that's the overarching picture. Now, as I understand it, there are two types or two buckets of programmatic recruiting technologies. Can you help us understand that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I don't know if it's types of technologies or typically two different types of product offerings. So let's abstract it to the technological layer, and then we're going to talk about what people can buy. So, one of the most sophisticated programmatic providers, in the United States right now, well, actually all of them, every major job board is a programmatic provider. Every job board that I know of buys traffic from other job sites, and they use software that is akin to what, the programmatic providers that commercialize this software for employers actually use. And job sites have been doing it from the beginning of time. So they know that to keep the people that buy postings happy, they need to go and buy eyeballs to come to their job site and apply to those jobs. And they've been using homegrown programmatic technology longer than anybody's been talking about it, at TAtech. And so the fundamental tech itself is um, you know, relatively straightforward. If you talk to different providers, everybody's got, a different view of what special sauce is, but the blocking and tackling of it is somewhat common. You've got a platform that brings in jobs. You've got a way of campaigning those jobs. You have a way of setting budgets on those jobs. You have a way of sending those jobs out to people where you can advertise them, and you've got a way of measuring the performance of those ads and your budget. Now, that technology has been commercialized for employers in typically one of two ways. The first way is to use the marketing term is a DSP. Oopsie. Oh, there we go. Hi. Now I can.
We've been working on it. We've been working on it.
All right. Far out. So anyway, is a DSP. So a demand side platform, which is a piece of software that allows you to basically take your ads and send them out to all the different places that you buy from, and to manage those and to either use. I'm a little skeptical. I've got a very high standard for what AI is. So I don't know, some people talk about AI. I think that there's a lot of really good rules-based engines that are out there. There's a lot of people that can use a platform to fly by a stick and basically do day trading on their own. But it's a platform that allows you to buy from lots of people and measure it and optimize it. But you have to have contracts with each one of the publishers. You buy the media the way they want to sell it, whether it's cost per click or a posting or a slot or a cost per application. And you use that platform to spend your money. They tend to be very complex. I went to computer camp and actually was, the original product person with Tom Chevalier building, our software now. And quite candidly, if I sat down in front of our software today, I don't think I could run it. And, it's complex stuff and you need to be a marketer to use it. So the companies that buy these DSPs typically are ad agencies, gig providers, people that spend lots of money. I mean, millions of dollars. Most of the time a month, they'll buy this stuff because it's worthwhile for them to do it. Job sites themselves buy it. Not a lot of employers directly buy these things. Okay. Because again, you really need an online recruitment marketer to buy it. So what that means is, a lot of ad agencies and programmatic providers sell this DSP service kind of as a managed service. So you buy the software and then you buy people that actually run it for you. So that's one offering. The other offering that a whole bunch of people have is an ad network, where in essence, these companies, we're one of them, but there's you've got Jovio does it, Recruitix does it. I think a bunch of other ad agencies do it. PandoLogic, I think, does it. Where they basically package a network as a media source. And so an employer can go in and say, hey, I've got a budget, these are my jobs, here's my money. And either on a cost per click basis or a cost per applicant basis, in our case, you let these programmatic providers take your money and buy where they can and deliver as much results as you can. So the way I call that is it's the easy button for programmatic. And that's how the market's kind of broken down, is you can buy this sophisticated software and do your own buying or engage someone to do it on your behalf, or you buy into an ad exchange. And typically what ends up happening is you've got your license, you're buying Indeed, and Indeed isn't in any of the ad exchanges that, they're a fantastic partner and platform, and people buy that direct. So they you have your Indeed license, you've got your subscription to LinkedIn, and historically people would end up buying maybe 2 to 3 other job sites, to kind of bet the infield, to use the craps analogy. But now they're just moving to a programmatic platform where, not rather than having to choose 2 or 3, the software just does it. And, you're looking at thousands of options depending on the job family to make sure that your job gets the right view. So those are the two.
And Appcast does one, the
No,
other, both? What do you guys do?
We do both, and we've been super lucky. We've got lots of great clients in all those different categories. We sell our product as the DSP as a piece of software. We sell it with managed services. We have the ad exchange. But I know that what we're trying to do here is be agnostic. And so if the folks that are on the call here today, the idea is to try and figure out scope and scale, because one of the biggest expenses of programmatic is actually the overhead of running it. So if what you want is you just want, you want to have your Indeed, you want to have your LinkedIn, and rather than buying 2 or 3 other sites, you want to bet the infield. Great. There's a bunch of really simple solutions where you can go do that. If what you want to do is you want to run all of your advertising using software and data, then that's another level of an investment, and another level of complexity. Quite candidly, more often than not, people start with the first and come to the second. But there we go. So we do it all.
So, is there a specific category, size, or some other qualification that determines what companies should use programmatic? I mean, is it something that an SMB could use, for example?
Yeah, well, most likely not. Peter, most small businesses, what they want is they don't want the complexity. They probably don't have a recruiter on staff. The recruiters are the hiring managers themselves, or maybe someone in HR. And this is a pretty specialized tool set for professional recruiters and talent acquisition organizations. So SMB organizations typically like, t-shirt sizing subscription models. They like flat rate posting simply because it's easy, straightforward. They don't have to really think about it. And honestly, if, if you came to me and said, hey, Chris, we're hiring at TAtech, can I use some of your tech to go advertise my jobs? I'd say, Peter, of course, here you go. But I would also say, hey, you know what? Most likely what you should do is probably just go throw up a posting on LinkedIn, Indeed, and Zip. And that's probably going to be simpler and easier for you. Now, when you get to, 2,000 people in a company and you have a professional recruiting staff, and you are finding that you have jobs where you are not getting enough applicant flow to solve your problem, whether it be blue collar or white collar, then all of a sudden you start to get into the use case where the power and the sophistication of, the sophistication of programmatic solutions starts to provide a return on investment, because the scale of the problem is big enough that it warrants that investment in complexity.
So it sounds like one area that would be particularly appropriate for this technology would be high volume recruiting. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look, that's really a sweet spot right now. And high volume can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, there's high volume where you've got, one requisition open in every single zip code in the United States, and you got to fill that. That's clearly a programmatic solution. If you've got, lots of different facilities that you're solving for, that's great. There are situations where, honestly, you have one facility, you've got one job, and you want as many people as you can possibly get into that one job. Programmatic is not honestly a magic wand there. It's part of a solution, but more often than not, that is just a talent supply and demand issue that is limiting your ability to fulfill something. Programmatic sings when there is inefficiency in the talent marketplace. So, it is really good at both extremes, oversupply and undersupply. When it's in balance, meaning you got one place, there's only so many people, everybody kind of has a job, it gets a little bit harder. The other area where it really works is, interestingly, when you there are certain industries, healthcare being one of them, where you have lots of different job families and different motivations for people within those job families. So because the marketing plans that you put in place for a CNA and an LNA are different than they are for nurses. And I'm married to a doctor, physician recruiting is just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And so, when you get to that level of a big organization that needs to implement lots of different marketing strategies, that's also another use case where software can really make a difference, because not everything is one size fits all.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's now turn to the meat of our session. How do you go about evaluating or buying a job ad exchange?
Well, it's my answer is going to be fairly generic. And so at a particular level, I think most advice is fairly straightforward. So the first thing that I would do is I would get to understand the players in the space. And I would select a group of people to talk to. If you're only buying a car and you go to one car lot, then you're going to just get that car, even if it's not necessarily the right car for you. And so, the first thing is that 3 or 4 years ago, there weren't, that many programmatic providers. Now today, happily, the industry is becoming a lot more robust, and there's a bunch of them. So do your research, create a short list, talk to each one of them. When you do speak to the people that you've selected, the first thing that you need to evaluate is the pay model that you want to use. So there are ad exchanges where you pay per click. There are ad exchanges where you pay per applicant. And each one of them has different strengths and weaknesses in terms of model. I personally, as you know, because we offer pay per applicant advertising, I've got a particular thesis on it, which is that, for a lot of recruiters, buying on a pay per applicant basis shifts the risk from the employer to the programmatic platform, and so it forces programmatic platforms to have more skin in the game. And so I think that that's important. But to be candid, there are some sophisticated, kind of upsides to using CPC. So if you're a sophisticated buyer, you might be able to titrate in particular types of buys with a little bit more refinement. If it's a CPC, ad exchange. So that's the first part, is figuring out how you want to buy. The second thing that I believe is really important is whenever you select a platform to work with, is to ensure that that platform can integrate effectively with your applicant tracking system, so that you can ensure that what you're buying is converting to what is creating value for you. So, clearly, if you're using a cost per applicant ad exchange, there's an integration that enables the buyer to see that, the traffic that they're buying converts to an application, because that's the billable event. But the other thing that we found is rainbows and unicorns show up in terms of performance when you tie the applies or the clicks that you're buying to the interview and to the hire. And so ensuring that whatever platform you use has the ability to integrate to your applicant tracking system to do that is, I think, going to be the thing that really is important. So that's a bit of a technical evaluation of both your platform, because there are some ATSs that don't integrate with anybody just because they technically can't, and then and of the provider that you choose. And then the last thing, quite candidly, is just basic partner due diligence. Understanding the organization that you're working with. Do they provide consultative advice? Are they able to provide you with market data to help you understand, how this stuff works? Are they going to be there for you? I'll be honest. When we buy software, one of the things that I always ask our purchasing team, whether it's our CRM or it's our HRIS system, is, do we know the people that are going to be supporting us, and do we believe that they will be there when we need us, when we need them? And do I think that our software is the best thing since sliced bread? Yeah, but quite candidly, if a family member of mine was to evaluate which programmatic platform to utilize, the thing that I'd be telling them to use is make sure that there's somebody good supporting it.
Um, I mean, obviously, you used the term earlier, do your homework. Any other thoughts on how you go about doing that analysis? How you know, how you judge whether an organization is going to be a good partner? Of course, you want to look at their track record, but any other tips there?
Well, there's a couple ways. Interestingly, number one is you got to understand that some job sites have their own programmatic platform, and so you just got to take that into account. But go ask your existing job board partners. Say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about a programmatic platform. Which one should I use? Interestingly, everybody in the space integrates with all the job sites. And so, what you're most likely going to hear is, the job site saying, hey, let's continue our direct relationship. That's probably the right thing to do. And in some cases, that's right. But if you have a good partner, you say, all right, well, these are the people that we integrate with. These are the things that we like about them. These are the things that we don't like about them. Boom. There you are. The second thing is without a doubt, I would ask for customer references in the industry that you're in, because the efficacy of programmatic solutions does vary from industry to industry. There are some industries where it's great, and there are some where it's just simply okay. And, on a whiteboard, it works perfectly everywhere because intellectually you're casting a wide net, but, the whiteboard logic is not always perfect. But the times that prospects have come to us and said, all right, we've talked to your prospects, we've talked to your references, we've talked to some other people, we still want more information. I've always said, hey, go talk to the publishers, because publishers work with everybody and they know where the bodies are buried. And if you want a real unvarnished view of who to work with, that's probably a good one.
Great. Okay, so that's the job ad exchange. What about a DSP?
This one is super technical. There's all sorts of details on it. And so let's talk about table stakes and the basic stuff, and then we could talk about some of the more razzle dazzle things. So at a very basic level, one of the most important things is that in your DSP, when you're looking at this software and you see that you're buying from all these different publishers, the data that you see in there in terms of spend matches what is in the publisher portal that you're buying from. Sounds simple, right? I spent $100 on site X in your software, and you log into the portal that site uses to send you a bill. It's got to say $100, and that's not always the case. And that isn't necessarily the programmatic platform's fault. Sometimes it is. Sometimes, the job site space was built way before there was third-party software to do this buying. And so there's, legitimate, real reasons why some of these platforms don't talk to each other. So it's no harm, no foul on both sides. But if you want to talk about, the first thing, you can't make good decisions about buying unless you know what you've spent. So it's a pretty basic thing. And asking questions about how that information flows into the platform and how that information is set is really important. Okay, so that's table stakes 1. Table stakes 2, you got to be able to buy from lots of different people. So if the DSP can only support 4 or 5 or 10 sites, that's probably not going to cut it. The market standard today is that effectively you can buy from anybody. And so you want to validate that. You want to understand, are there any sites that you can't buy from? Are there any limitations about the number of sites that you can buy from? table stakes, rules-based buying, and the ability to take jobs, campaign them together, and put rules around those campaigns. So I want to take my blue collar jobs for these, and put them into a campaign. And then within that campaign, I want to split them up by the 5 different places we have factories. And for factory 1, I'm willing to spend $1,000 a month. And for factory 2, $5,000 a month, factory 3, $1,000 a month, factory 4, blah. And to be able to put rules at the job level. This is how many applies I want to buy per job. This is how many I want to not sponsor the job if a job already has enough applications. There's a whole myriad of rules that you want to be able to put in place to create very sophisticated campaigns, and you need that. Now, some platforms will do that for you automatically, using an AI or their own internal logic. Others are more just rules driven, like it will kind of interrogate you and say, how many applies do you want per job? What do you need to do here? And have it set. But at baseline, that's what you need. You need accurate spend data on the platform. You need to be able to buy from lots of places. You need to be able to campaign your jobs. And last but not least, is you need to have down funnel data come into the platform. Again, table stakes is application data. So it's got to be able to accurately track applications. That means one of 2 things. One is placing pixels so that you can see an in-session conversion on the applicant tracking system. But as you become more sophisticated and you spend a lot of money, those pixel conversions actually become less accurate. And so you need the ability to bring application and actually interview and hire data in from the source of record. So there's data integrations that mean you need to be able to talk back and forth. My preference is that you would see a very well-developed set of APIs that, the publisher has documentation on it and, that they can share. So it's like, hey, can I tie in and say, yeah, here you go. Here's a white paper. Here's a development license. Go. But at the baseline, you need to be able to bring that down funnel data in so that you can do what you want to do. Now, outside of that, there's now you start to get into the things that are a little bit more razzle dazzle. A/B testing of job content, geofencing to ensure that jobs are only shown in specific areas, to ensure that you don't have competition. Geo expansion of jobs for like those white collar jobs where you can work anywhere, be able to show them in Montana. The ability to discriminate automatically by job family and title and all sorts of things with regards to the sources that you use. So the jobs automatically flow to the right source without human intervention. The ability to put jobs onto social platforms, onto search platforms, razzle dazzle analytics. So really, as you get down into those things, it becomes more of a use case based discussion, because these are, I hope it's become clear, programmatic DSPs is enterprise software. Like, you need to approach it like buying an applicant tracking system. You need to approach it like buying, your CRM of record. It's real honking stuff. And so, there's not a quick way to evaluate that type of software.
So if you can, I know you've been through a lot of these integrations already. Put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, the employer, and what does that process internally look like for an employer? Do they start with an RFP? Do they start, how does it actually unfold on the buyer side?
It's a great question, Peter, and it's starting to change. And so RFPs are becoming more and more common. Like, when at the beginning of a technology, family, right? If you go and look at the analysts, they've been tracking HRIS systems and ATSs and career site platforms and CRMs for a long time. And so on the analyst report, they've got that section and you can read about that. When that happens, buyers start to move from ad hoc evaluations to more RFP evaluations. And that's starting to happen with programmatic. So like if we fast forward 2 or 3 years, I think that, you know, when Gartner does their TAtech landscape, they're going to have a category for programmatic platform. And, you know, there's going to be a bunch of logos there, and they might even do a magic quadrant. And most of this is going to be turned into RFPs. Right now, it's still episodic. You know, we get a lot of business word of mouth. We get a lot of business from people that were at one point and went to another company and implement what we've got. We're getting more and more RFPs. So we're kind of in the Wild West days, which is super fun.
Yeah. So one of the issues that's on every talent acquisition leader's mind these days is DE&I.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about what programmatic might do in that area, or could do, or should do.
Super interesting. Super interesting. So, you know, for you know what happened in Minneapolis last spring, early summer, to George Floyd made a lot of companies think about, you know, diversity and inclusion and equity in whole different ways. And interestingly, that hit Appcast as well. And you know, we're headquartered in northern New England. Our second largest office is in Fredericton, New Brunswick. You know, we are in a very homogeneous, difficult place to be diverse, you know, kind of environment because just of where we live. But what we do is we're product people, and we try and science the crap out of stuff to see if we can figure it out. So outside of a lot of soul searching about how we hire, we sat down and we said, does programmatic help solve the problem of diversity and inclusion and equity, or does it make it worse? And so our tech team went and built something really interesting. We married into our platform some audience tracking technology that's used in the consumer world to understand web audiences. And one of the vectors that we can use is the ability to understand the different ethnic and, you know, kind of underrepresented communities web traffic. So like I can see now when you post a job, you know, how much of the web traffic and applies are from, let's say, you know, folks that identify as white Americans, you know, African Americans, Asian Americans, blah, 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 Native Americans, whole 9 yards. Or that they don't identify as what internet research firms has identified their web traffic as. So it's imperfect. But we did some research on this, and it's fascinating. So first off, I hope my friends that are on this call that are, you know, run diversity job sites take what I'm about to say with the way that it was meant. Diversity job sites are fantastic resources. They're something that can help every talent acquisition's diversity and equity, inclusion, recruiting programs. But the reality is that they have extraordinarily low volume. Do you know what the #1 job site for diversity recruiting is in the United States? Indeed. Do you know why? It's the #1 job site in the United States. And so, you know, one of the things that's difficult to wrap your mind around is that the way to actually become more diverse is actually to make sure that your message is broadly seen. That's why, you know, when you analyze, you know, the source of hire for most, you know, kind of diverse candidates coming out of the job site space, it absolutely always is the #1 job site in the United States. So when we did this analysis to try and figure out if programmatic was part of the problem or part of the solution, what we found is programmatic advertising actually dramatically oversamples for people of color. And the reason being is that we're casting a wide net. There's no longer any predisposition about, oh, where we should put this ad to get a good candidate. The data does it. And data is blind. And so it was super cool to see that. Now, it depends on job family, it depends on geography, it depends on a bunch of stuff. But in general, programmatic ad tech methodologies materially oversample for people of color, and more often than not, oversample for women. Go figure.
Well, that's good news.
It
That's
is
good
good news.
news.
It is good news. It is good news.
We have come, unfortunately, to the end of our hour. And I know you're a busy guy, so I'm not going to keep you past the allotted time. But any final thoughts, words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, no, I guess the only thing I'm going to say is I did see a note here in the chat about whether this is US centric or it's becoming more global. Is right now programmatic advertising is hot and heavy in the US, and beginning to do, you know, and somewhat in Canada. When you get into EMEA, it is a radically different ballgame. There is some growth that you're seeing of the US version of programmatic advertising and the software that's being bought in the UK, but not to a huge extent. And once you get into the mainland, you find providers that are using programmatic technology to have a different job offering, you know, maybe different types of job ads or a different model, but they're not, the ecosystem that exists in the United States doesn't exist in Europe at this point. Now, can it be an effective platform? Yes. And there are very large scale global companies that are using it, but it is, for all intents and purposes right now, it's a US game. And I expect that to change over the next couple of years. But for those of you that have a global ear, that's what we're seeing.
Okay.
All right.
Chris, thank you very much. It's been a learning experience for me, and I'm sure for everybody else on the program. We really appreciate your taking the time, and best of luck to you and your team at Appcast.
Thanks, Peter. It's always a pleasure, and I hope everyone has a warm and healthy January. Take care, okay? Bye.
Bye-bye now. Okay, everyone. Well, listen, we're going to close up now, but before we let you go, just want to remind you that we have some great shows coming up on February 9th. Work Inspired, a fireside chat with Aaron Ain, the CEO of the mashup between Kronos and Ultimate Software. And on March 9th, we'll continue with our TAtech Oral History Project, speaking with Mike Durney, the former CEO of DICE. All of those events are free, so please go to the TAtech Live tab at tatech.org and register. We'll look forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye now.